Oh, this looks good. So this is our agenda. This is on the menu today. We're going to talk about just a little bit about version control history, and then we're going to dive into some Git basics. Then I'm going to talk about basically cloud dev tools that are available, and then we're going to do a live demo. So there's not much time. So let's dive into a brief history of version control. And when I say brief, I'm not going to spend much time on it, but in a post-COVID era, tech professionals increasingly work in a distributed workspace, whether hybrid or fully remote. To web developers, this is nothing new. It merely accelerates a trend pioneered by digital agencies over the last few decades. And people have used many systems to keep track of source code revisions over the past 50 years. Here's a little bit of a flow chart, shows the very first one, SCCS, back in 1972 for Unix systems. I know nothing about that really, but I think it still ships with some Unix and Linux distros. And then this whole history leading up to right after BitKeeper in 2000, there was a big controversy over the Linux kernel using this proprietary source code management tool, BitKeeper. So you see a big flurry after that. Bazaar, Mercurial, and Git all come out in 2005. They're all open source tools. Basically, Git is the best. It's kind of the winner of the evolution of source code. Of the many different tools used to collaborate with remote teams, perhaps none is more important than Git, the version control system which Linus Torvalds created in 2005 to allow thousands of developers worldwide to keep track of changes to millions of lines of code in the Linux kernel. Can we make sure we mute everybody else? I feel like someone else has got their sound on. Thank you. And so anyway, Git, everything you need to know about Git all in one slide. What was I saying? Of the many different tools used to collaborate with remote teams, perhaps none is more important than Git, the version control system, which Linus Torvalds created in 2005 to allow thousands of developers worldwide to keep track of changes to millions of lines of code in the Linux kernel. Today, Git powers online code sharing platforms like GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket, and enables remote collaboration on complex software development projects. Solo freelance developers can have trouble learning how to use Git like pros, especially if they do not collaborate with other developers or report to a project manager. But you can practice Git discipline all by yourself. This Lunch and Learn will show you how to use some free tools, GitHub and Gitpod in the cloud, and DDEV for your local development environment to practice the kind of workflow that you'd use in a pro digital agency. And for those of us that are already Git pros, it will show us some tricks to accelerate training and onboarding of remote collaborators. So GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket are the big three cloud services that can be used by distributed teams. And GitLab and Bitbucket also have self-hosted options. We will see this slide again when we go over all of the tools that I'm going to use in the live demo. How does Git work? Are you guys seeing this? It seems like there's something in front. Oh, here we go. This is Git. It tracks collaborative work on projects through a beautiful distributed graph theory tree model. Cool, how do we use it? No idea. Just memorize these shell commands and type them to sync up. If you get errors, save your work elsewhere, delete the project, and download a fresh copy. It's funny because it's true. A lot of us start using Git and we really don't know how it works. We don't necessarily know all the ins and outs of it. And, we clone a project from somewhere, we work on it, and it might get messed up. We might not know how to get it unmessed up. You're in a detached head state. You Google, what do I do? Like, I don't know. You nuke it and you download it. You clone this repo again from the remote that you're working off of. And this has happened to a lot of people when they first start out with Git. The good news is you don't need to know everything about Git to start using Git today and making money. Just learn the basic commands, just like it says in the cartoon. Don't ask me to go into too much detail in this presentation. There's just not enough time. But if you really want to know the details, the full manual is online at git-scm.com. I'll just mouse over that and show you that it's gonna, when I share the slides and maybe even a PDF of the slides, this is an active link and it should open in a new tab. And this is the real website. This is where you go to Git. and it's got all the documentation, the entire Pro Git book, all kinds of great stuff here. So that's where you go if you really, really want to learn the ins and outs. But in the meantime, I'm going to assume you've already been to that website. You've got access to the entire manual, so you don't have to ask for too many details from me in this presentation. And that's where also you'll download the software so that you can use Git in your local system. So let's get started. It's for the initial setup and configuration. It should only take 5 minutes. You're going to configure your username and email, which that's not used to authenticate with GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket or anything. That's just used essentially to sign your code. So every time you make a commit, it's going to say who committed that change to that code base. And this is known as either Git praise or Git blame. There's 2 commands that you can use to find out who wrote the line of code, depending on whether they did a good job or a bad job. But it's praise or blame for your code contributions. And also you'll want to create an SSH key. The first step takes about less than a minute. The second step maybe will take about 5 minutes, especially when you go through that link at the bottom to actually see how to connect it to your GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket. But in this presentation, we're using GitHub, and that will show you. I will open that also in a new tab. This is how to connect to GitHub with SSH. We're not going to go into that now. It's just stuff that you can find in the slides later so that you can come back to it. Are we already up to a repo? My goodness, that's what it is. Wow, we're diving right in. So the repository is the central sort of concept of version control. It stores all the different versions or branches of a single project source code. It's kind of like a magical multiple dimension kind of portal that allows you to have all these branching timelines of different realities of this code base that have gone off in different directions. And you can kind of merge them together or split them apart. It's all about branching and merging. So the way that it works essentially in a nutshell is you've got a code base, and these are all the files, whatever you put in the Git repo. And then you want to make some changes. You might make a new branch and put it in there, and you make some changes in that branch. Now you got 2 things that are different states, and they can all go off and have their own alternate histories and alternate timelines. It's like the wonderful kind of science fiction multiverse concept, and these are just a few of the simple commands. You use git init to initialize a new repo. You use git add to stage changes to be committed. Use git commit to commit stage changes within a commit or with a commit message. Essentially, git add doesn't actually make changes. It just stages changes that you're going to lock in with this commit. And each commit is like a bookmark. It's like if all the branches are different sort of alternate history timelines, then every second that you could drop a bookmark in there and say, this is exactly the state of it at this point in time, that's a commit. And if you start a repo and then you make all your changes and you make one commit, then you can only go back and revert all your changes and go back to the beginning. But if you make, as Matt Pritchard used this term earlier, atomic commits, so every time you change a few lines of code that adds a salient feature or debugs something in your code, you're going to make a little tiny commit for that and make a little note of what it was that you did. And then the more of those little markers you drop in, the more different restore points you'll have that you can kind of set your time machine to zero into that moment of the code's history, and you can go back in time to exactly when it was that way. If you need to undo a bunch of stuff that caused a problem, you can do that. Or if you need to have different branches that go off in different directions and see which one works out better, you can do that. The code down here at the bottom, well, first of all, don't worry if your Git doesn't look quite as cool as this right away. This is because I use Z Shell. I use Oh My Z Shell with a theme called Agnoster, and it actually uses a special nerd font, which is why you see these cool shapes in my, well, there's the skull. That's a whole nother thing. There's a random emoji every time I start my shell, but I just put that in there because the name of my computer was taking up too much real estate. So I just wanted it to take up less real estate in these screenshots. And then what you see in blue is where we are in sort of like where we are in space in the file system. So in my tilde home directory, I made a demo directory, and then I go in there and I say git init demo repo. This initializes a new empty Git repository. It also makes a directory to keep it in. I passed it that name, demo repo. So it says it initialized an empty Git repo in home lotus demo repo .git, and that .git, we'll come back to that in a minute. We won't go into too much detail, but that's a hidden folder. Hidden in Unix or Linux, the dot files are considered hidden. They're just not listed when you when you list the contents of a directory, but they're not really hidden. They're just they're dot files. So they're not shown by default, but it's easy enough to look at them. And that is actually a hidden directory that has all the metadata that makes this a Git repo. And if you delete it, it's no longer a Git repo. It's just a regular folder filled with files that only have their state at one point in time, and they no longer will have that history. So what we just created by saying git init is we created this .git folder where Git's going to keep all of its metadata and all of its checksums and all the cool stuff that I'm not going to describe in great detail. And then I changed directory into there, and you'll see while my prompt on my system, maybe not on yours, and maybe not when we get out to Gitpod and we're running DDEV out there, but you see that it gets this green sort of arrow where it says master, and master is the default for historical reasons. That is when you first git init, that's the name of your main branch. Nowadays, the convention is to actually name that main just for intersectionality, but it's not possible to rename it until after you've put something in there. So you'll see what I did here is I touch a .git ignore file. It just makes an empty file with that name. I use git add to add that file. You see after I touch it, my little indicator turns yellow, and it means that there are changes that haven't been committed. And then I use git add to stage those changes. It's still yellow because I haven't committed the change, but you see a plus after it. And that means that I have added some stuff that's ready to be committed. It's staged. And then I do git commit -am, which is sort of a shortcut. That's like skipping, you don't even really need to, I think maybe I didn't even need to do git add if I do git commit -a, which just is git commit everything that's changed -a. And then the -m is your commit message, which I put initial commit of demo repo. Boom, it says one file changed, 0 insertions, 0 deletions. It created a git ignore. It's an empty file, but it created it. It knows it's there. There's an inode with a label on it, and Git knows about it. And so it added that to the repo. And then I'm able to use the git branch command with the -M to rename that main branch main, which is the new convention that is followed by GitHub. And just that's kind of the trend that's taken over. Then you want to create a remote repository. Because right now you've created something in your local, you want to create something out there in space that you can share with all the other developers that are going to work on this shared project. And GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, and other things too. I mean, there's Amazon's got their own Git implementation for AWS, and Azure DevOps has Git, everybody supports it. But we're using GitHub today. So to create a remote repository, you create a new repository on GitHub. You choose public or private repo as needed. If you plan to push your local repo to GitHub, you want to leave this new repo empty. That means no template, no description, no README file. Don't have GitHub make the Git ignore for you. Don't have GitHub include a software license, whether that's GPL or MIT or whatever software license you may want to. It's very convenient that they offer you this, but since we're going to be pushing something from our local, we won't be able to push it if there's something already in here, because you can't merge things that have no common history. So if you start the same project in 2 different locations, they can't be merged after that. You have to have, you started at someplace, it's empty over here, you pull this over there, then they can branch off from each other, but they need to start from a common point. So this is how you create a remote repository. And then this is how you git push it to GitHub. So you use git remote command to add, remove, or list remotes. You use git push to send your local changes to the remote repo. Use git pull to sync remote changes into your local repo. And you can use git status to see whether any local changes need to be committed, and use git diff to see a line-by-line list of changes before committing. I'm going to just move very rapidly over some of these details, and you can go back to the Git SCM and the Pro Git book to find more details about that. Also, the manual pages are part of Git, and you can always just there's online help for any of these commands if you within Git itself and within the manual pages of Unix and Linux. But you'll see what I did here is git remote add origin. So the origin is going to be GitHub. That's where we're going to keep the canonical repo that everybody can share. And I'm going to git remote add origin. And this is the thing that I just created, git at github.com : my username, hot webmatter, / the name of the repo that I just made, demo-repo.git. So I have added that as a remote to my local environment. And then I can do git push, and -u is to set upstream to origin. And it says -u origin main, and that's the branch that I'm pushing. It says I'm enumerating objects. There's 3 objects. It counts them. It sends them out through space. It gets to GitHub. Everybody's happy. Branch main set up to track remote branch main from origin. Fantastic. Clones and forks. Episode 2, Attack of the Forks. Git clone is used to copy a remote repo into your local environment. The remote repository is the origin. Repos may be cloned via HTTPS or SSH protocols. I highly recommend that you get it set up to use the SSH, although we will see in a moment that Gitpod actually sets up an HTTPS protocol connection, and it uses a token which is automatically generated in a really cool way by Gitpod that we don't need to worry about the implementation of that. But when you're doing it in your local environment, right, you probably want to set up the SSH key, and that's way back on that slide I showed you. It was like the 3rd or 4th slide. There's also a GitHub command line tool called GH. And if you have Homebrew for Mac OS or Linux or Windows with WSL2, which is Linux, then you can use brew install GH to install that. And it's just a really quick and friendly way to get set up with your GitHub account from your local computer, and you don't need to do quite as much automatically. Like it'll roll a certificate for you. It'll enroll it for you in GitHub. You don't need to go to the web page and copy and paste some jibba jabba and paste it in there and say, that's my public key. And then, but either way, you can do an SSH login, and it won't ask you every time you push and pull to type a password, unless you're very security conscious and you include a passphrase in your SSH key, in which case it asks you for the passphrase, but GitHub will use that key-based authentication, which is just a more secure way of doing it and more convenient. Git fork is a little bit different. That's when it's not my project, it's somebody else's project that's out there and it's already on GitHub or some other platform. And I want to copy their entire project into my account so that I can make changes to it, because I don't have permission to write to their project. They have to review all of the contributions to their open source project and make certain that nobody is messing it up or introducing bugs or trying to hack it with malware or something. But so they're going to have a little gate on there, and I'm going to be able to make a copy of it, a fork. The forked copy is in my repo. I can make changes to it. And if I clone the forked repo to my local environment, then my forked copy on GitHub is the origin remote, but the parent repo of the original software project maintainers is known as the upstream remote. Now, you may not be allowed to change the parent repo unless you are part of that team, but you can submit a pull request to the upstream developers, and more about pull requests in just a moment. And you'll see a screenshot here, which is just going to show, I didn't use I didn't type git fork at the command line. I go in GitHub up to the corner where it says watch, fork, and star. This is a repo that I actually forked recently, along with about 1,800 other people. You can see 1.8K. That is a popular repo. That's the one that is a Lando project on Gitpod, but the one we're doing today is the DDEV project. So clones and forks. Then there's Git and Git Ignore, the .git folder and the .git ignore file. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this, but .git is that hidden directory that we talked about earlier. It's got all of your metadata for your project. It's got checksums of things. There's SHA sums. It doesn't really matter how Git keeps track of everything. What it does is it keeps track every time you make a commit of all the differences in text between all the different text files, in a way that's very easy for you to compare them side by side with something called a diff. It also keeps track of the differences in binary files, but they're not as easy to just eyeball the changes. It's really designed for source code and for text files, but it will also keep track if you've got some images in there that are JPEGs or GIF or PNG files or something, or if you've got audio files or video files or database dumps that are zipped up, GNU zipped archives or something. All of these are just kind of binary files. If you look at them in GitHub, it's just going to look like a bunch of nonsense and jibba jabba, because it's all of the binary stuff is just going to be represented by some kind of weird looking, whatever the alphanumeric representation is of those bits. And it's not going to be something particularly human readable, but Git will keep track of that stuff too. And on occasion, you will commit some of these things. You would call them blobs or binary large objects, and they can be committed to Git as well. Then there's the Git Ignore. .git ignore is a hidden file, and that was what I made an empty one in my initial when I did the git init for that repo. Before I could change the name of the main branch from master to main, I had to save something into it. I had to make a commit. And so I chose to put in an empty .git ignore. Practically all of my projects are going to have a .git ignore. Git ignore file in your project's root allows you to optionally provide a list of patterns, and files matching these patterns will not have their changes tracked in the repository. There's a little more to it than that. You can actually have .git ignore deeper within the folder structure of your project, and then it will ignore things just within that directory and its children, but we're not going to get into it. It's really cool. You don't have to actually specify every single file you want it to ignore. You can put like star.gz and it will ignore all GNU zipped archives. Or if you put star. You get the idea. If you put star.jpg, it might ignore all the JPEGs, provided that the extension is spelled that way and not JPEG. You get the idea. It matches patterns. And anything matching that pattern will not be stored in the repository. This can be quite useful, especially when it comes to build and deploy workflows for continuous integration and continuous deployment, which is beyond the scope of this, but we will touch on it lightly later. Branches, I already kind of talked about this just a little bit. Main, dev, stage, feature. There's a couple of different things here. It's kind of two different classes, major classes of branches that you'll encounter. There are your canonical branches that are that are part of your project all the time. There's going to be the main branch, which is going to be the ultimate source of truth for your software project. There's going to be generally, you'll make like a dev branch, which is for hacking on and breaking and fixing and breaking and fixing. There may be another intermediate thing in between that could be called test or stage. Sometimes it's called QA for quality assurance, or UAT for user acceptance testing. And in some projects, you'll actually have test and then QA and then UAT, depending on whether it's the individual developer is testing something in a branch, or all of the developers in the company, all the engineers are testing it there, but maybe not, or like sharing it beyond that. And then when they think it's ready, maybe it goes on to quality assurance within their company. And those people hammer on it and make sure that they can find any bugs and send them back and get them fixed. And then they release it, if you're being very, very careful, to UAT, which is user acceptance testing for your client. And they actually are going to make sure that they're ready to see this thing go into production. It's much more common on small projects to just see like dev and main, or dev test main, dev stage main, something like that. But on big projects, you might see even more, and you may see other just actually environments where these things can be deployed to and staged. So branch naming conventions for feature branches. Feature branches are the other type of branch. They're not like always there, like the dev branch and the stage branch and the main branch. They're just, every time you want to make something, you're going to make a new branch in your local, which just has your brand new changes to the source code. And it's generally based off of, I have another slide about this. So I don't want to extemporaneous too much here, but it's going to generally be based off of the main branch, which is the sort of ultimate source for truth that has all of the good, clean code that's already been vetted. And different teams have different rules for naming their feature branches. You can use issue tracker IDs in the branch name, which is helpful if you have some kind of project management software like Jira, or I don't know, like I've used a whole bunch of them over the years, Jira, Redmine, Axosoft, I'm thinking of Asana, but it doesn't really have ticket numbers. But anyway, the idea is that if you're using a system that does have a unique ID number for each issue, an issue tracker, then many teams will prefix their branches with these numbers. And here's an example: 7432/prevent-null-reference. Or if you're not using, say you don't have a project manager and it's a very small project, or it's just something you're doing for yourself, sometimes a good alternative to putting kind of issue numbers on it is to use the date. And according to the ISO 8601 specification, which is the International Standards Organization, says that you should have the full year 2022 dash the month with a leading zero if it's less than 10. So 2022-02, and then today would be dash 18, I believe is February 18th, 2022. So that's another way of doing this. It helps you to at least keep your branches sort of in chronological order when you list them, or have some vague idea of when you opened that branch, whether or not you may be working on it for a week before you close it, or I don't know. But this is it's another way of trying to keep things organized if you're not using like an issue tracker. Or you could use task category keywords in branch names, which is fairly common. I don't always do it. I think Bitbucket recommends it because you can use you can trigger different pipelines off of the prefix. So if all of your if all your official releases to production start with release / something, then you can have a Bitbucket pipeline that says, oh, it starts with release, it's going to go to production, or something like that. I don't always use these. I do recommend putting some kind of number or something in there. But you could just come up with names, right? They could just be like, oh, what I'm doing, and at least you've got an idea what the branch is for. And here's an example of the prefix followed by the tracker ID, which is a very Jira style branch name, hotfix /7432 prevent null reference. Jira would recognize that pull request as being associated with Jira ticket 7432. And that's, the other thing about that is you'll notice there are no blank spaces. I never hit the space bar in any of these. White space is not allowed. So we use either the hyphen, / or underscore separators to maintain readability of the branch names, so that it's just not a bunch of words all mushed together. And what you'll see off in the great little image that I chose, the clip art image from the slides, you see that they have origin / dynamic - directive - arguments. They actually look a lot like the things that I've had here for examples. And you may note that origin, in fact, is not the name of it's not part of the name of the branch. That is actually the remote, right? The remote is origin / and then some of these programs will, if your first part of it ends with / after that, and you've got common branches that all start with something like hotfix. Bug fix is usually when you're fixing a bug that's going to go through the entire, it goes to dev, it goes to stage, it goes with test and UAT and whatever, and then it goes to production. Hotfix is when you've got an emergency fix that needs to go directly to production and skip everything else because it's a real emergency. You call that a hotfix. I don't know, but sometimes you'll see the name of the remote, origin or upstream or whatever it is, and you may have multiple remotes. Acquia, for example, if you're using Acquia, you may have like a remote that's named AC or something, which is your other Git repo besides your GitHub one, right? That you're pushing your code to Acquia. But you'll see the name of the remote / then the prefix / then whatever your dash delimited string is, whether or not that's got a number in it or whatever. And sometimes the programs will nest things differently if it's got the / character in there. But I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. I think I probably already have. So here's creating a new branch and Git pushing it to GitHub. Use git checkout -b branch name to create a new local branch. Git push -u for upstream origin, and then the branch name to send your local branch to the origin remote. And if you just try to git push without specifying origin, Git actually anticipates that you might do that. It's fairly common mistake for people to make, and it will tell you exactly what to do. Or a best guess of what you're trying to do, which is generally right. So you'll note here that I do git checkout -b dev. So I've created a new branch dev. It says switch to a new branch dev. I branched dev off of my main branch. So its initial contents are identical to the contents of the main branch at the same point in time that I made the branch. Then I try to git push and it says fatal. The current branch dev has no upstream branch. Well, of course, because I didn't tell it to track upstream origin. So it says git push --set -upstream origin dev. That's the long version of -u, which is what I put up at the top, git push -u origin. Either way will work. And so you'll see right after that, I do git push -u origin dev, and it pushes it. And it says, create a pull request for dev on GitHub by visiting https://github.com, my username, demo repo, pull new dev. Well, that's interesting. I think it's the slide after this one. Sorry. Create a Git commit and then Git push that to GitHub, right? Because right now I made the new branch, I pushed it, but it's identical. It's identical to the other branch. So let's say I make a feature branch now. Git checkout -b, again, same as I did to create a dev branch, feature And here I have just the date stamp because I'm not using Jira, 2022-02-18-edit-git ignore, because I'm going to edit the Git ignore file. I'm going to add something to the Git ignore file. And you'll note that what I do immediately after that is echo.ds_store. And then that double greater than is a shell redirection. And I'm adding that to .git ignore. So I'm actually appending this string .ds_store. I'm appending that to that empty file. Now it will contain one line. And what it'll say is, if you're on Mac OS and you've got these DS store files that appear all over the place, ignore those. Don't put those in the Git repo. So then I'm trying to git push, and it says the same error as last time. The current branch has no upstream branch, but to push the current branch and set the remote as upstream, use git push -- set upstream origin. That's the one we want to use. That's us on GitHub. And then the name of the branch, feature / whatever the heck I named it. And so you can just copy and paste that if you want, or you can laboriously retype it character by character. But that is exactly what you want to do. Git push. And then set upstream, I just do -u because I happen to know that's a shorter way of doing -- set -upstream. But other than that, the thing that I typed right after that is identical to what Git recommended that I should type. And it says enumerating objects 5. Wow. And then it says create a pull request for that feature on GitHub by visiting a URL. Well, first of all, public service announcement, when you're making these commits, don't do this. Here's another XKCD. This is the same guy who drew the stick figures who are having trouble understanding how does Git work earlier. And this is a guy who's a programmer, and he's actually, Randall Schwartz is a NASA, he's a rocket scientist. So he knows what he's doing. And yet here he is 14 hours ago, he's starting the project saying created main loop and timing control. And 9 hours ago, he's saying enabled config file parsing. And then he gets less and less helpful with his messages until it just says more code. Here, have code. ASDFJKL semi, my hands are typing words, hands. Don't do that. Be kind to your future self and to other developers who are going to come in the future and look at the source code, try to figure out what the heck happened when they're looking at that one line of code and they use git blame to see when it was last touched by someone, when it was last changed. This is your chance to make a really clear, concise description of exactly what you were trying to accomplish. And this is a wonderful article that I always, always recommend. I'm going to, for goodness sake, it should be a live. I'm telling you, that's the one. I thought I fixed this link. It's just the one link. Anyway, whatever. That's the one link apparently that doesn't work here, but it's cbeams cbea.ms/git commit. We can find it pretty easy. It's a wonderful article. What it basically says in a nutshell is keep it short. It's got to be 50 characters or less for historical reasons. And that has to do with GitHub and other services kind of expect that. Different software that you may use is going to kind of expect that your initial Git commit message is 50 characters or less. And then you can have a new line after that, and you can put some other lines of text that are like, I think up to 80 lines, 80 characters per line after that for additional explanation. But you want to keep that first line just tight and concise. And in order to keep it as short as possible, this guy with this cool article recommends that you use the verb tense, which is called the imperative mood. And in other words, Randall Schwartz, he did a fine job saying created main loop and timing control, but it would be one character shorter if he said create main loop and timing control. So don't use the past tense, use the imperative mood. The way that the article describes it is you want to imagine that if this commit is merged with main branch, it will blah, blah, whatever you put on that line. So it will create main loop and timing control. That's what you're after. Nice, short, tight, concise, explain exactly what you're trying to do. Now let's take a look at creating a pull request, or if you're using GitLab, you create a merge request, which is the same thing. And here's the pull request for our last change. Boom, boy, I keep on thinking these links are going to work. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. You get the idea. It looks like that. I was gonna have that be, I don't know why. Anyway, the link didn't work, but I'm just going to power through this because I'm going a little bit too slow like usual. So what about DevOps, continuous integration, continuous development? Well, optionally, I'm not going to be able to show you how to do this, but you can also set up something that listens for a merge hook that says, wow, the branch that I'm tracking, the dev branch or the stage branch, when new code arrives in this, I'm going to do something. So you kick off a process that's going to build your project and test it, generally in a kind of a cloud environment. And if it passes all the tests, it's going to deploy it to the target environment. So again, main, dev, stage. Just imagine that I told you a little bit more about that, but you can go to JD Leonard. Oh, look at that. This link works. Sometimes the links work, sometimes they don't. Here's JD Leonard. Well, actually, it's going to be an ad, apparently. But that's the idea. Can you just make it very, very quiet and then say skip ads? And there's JD Leonard. It's a great little, that one is 57 minutes and 54 seconds, which mine is going to go over again. I practically guarantee it. But because, I don't know, I just get so into it. Anyway, deploying without a pull request. This is a weird little shortcut. Not necessarily a best practice, but a handy practice in some cases. And when deploying to lower environments like dev or stage, you may opt to skip the pull request. I was going to show you the pull request in a little bit more detail, but the link didn't work. But the idea is that it's kind of like a place where you can have a conversation about all the code changes that you're proposing that you want to make. And people can write back and say, I reviewed your code and you have this error, and then you can fix the error. And they can say, it looks good now. I'm going to merge your pull request. It's called a pull request because when Linus Torvalds made it in the first place, he was from the perspective of someone who is a software project maintainer. So he's thinking all these thousands of developers are asking me to pull their code into my project. But from your perspective as a developer, you may prefer to think of it as a merge request, which is indeed what you're doing when you create this thing. You're asking somebody, can I merge my code in your project? And so that's the reason why GitLab calls it a merge request instead of a pull request. Either term is accurate and works. So you can see here that there's a little bit of a shortcut. You can say git checkout dev and git merge dash, the minus character, and git push. And what that's going to do is that minus just means whatever the last branch was that I was just in before I switched to the branch that I'm in right now, merge that. So I was in the feature branch, feature 2022-02-18 edit Git Ignore. I check out the dev branch, I merge the branch that I just came from, and I push the new contents of the dev branch. And you'll see here that I switched to branch dev, and then it says fast forward and Git Ignore. We're adding one line to Git Ignore. That's the DS, the thing that I told it to ignore all those, the little dot files that that help Mac to know where you drag that stuff to on the screen, among other things. Anyway, that's a shortcut that would kick off if you've got your continuous integration set up for the dev environment. That will kick off a build to dev, whether you're using Jenkins or GitHub Actions or something like Bitbucket pipelines, Acquia pipelines, something like Travis. Not getting into CI, it's out of scope, but that would kick off a build. You don't want to do this in a production environment. You want to make sure that you make a pull request and it goes through code review before you push it to a production environment. I'm almost at the end of the Git stuff, and then I'll get into the next part. Best practices: you can cut feature branches off of main. This is how GitHub uses GitHub to build GitHub. You might want to come back and click that link later. It will be in the PDF version of the slides. or you can cut feature branches off dev. And I don't really approve of that. I've been on projects where that's what you do. If everybody cuts off of dev, then dev kind of has to be 100%. Everybody's code needs to be mature and stable before you can move it to the next, to move that up to stage or wherever you're going to do QA on it. And then that needs to pass all the QA, and then you merge stage into the main branch. You actually merge the entire dev branch into the stage branch and the entire stage branch into the main branch. It's kind of an old-fashioned way of thinking about it. It's more of, I mean, I guess it's kind of an agile methodology, but it's a sprint-based methodology that that you're assuming that you're going to take however many 2 weeks to work on all these tickets. They're all going to be done at the same time, and then you're going to take them to the next step. That's sprints. It's kind of rigid. Cutting the feature branches off of main is even more agile. That's continuous integration. That's continuous development. You can always take, if it's a hot fix, you take it off of main straight to your feature branch and you merge it straight back to main because it's going straight into production, because you need to do that right away. There's a critical bug. Or if you feel a little bit hesitant about the code, you can send it to the dev branch, or you can send it to the stage branch. You can look at it in different environments. You can spend as long as you want doing code review. This is the coolest way to do it. I do recommend that you check out the slideshow, how GitHub uses GitHub to build GitHub, but I will give you a profanity warning. There are some curse words in that slideshow in case that bothers you. And you'll note that I did not put a curse word, but I put something which is called a Grawlix, Grawlix, your vocabulary word for the day. Dev on the go with cloud dev tools. Let's just motor through this part. It really is just going to be some icons, and I'm just going to point at them, and then we'll do the live demo. I probably have just enough time. GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. We already talked about this. I told you would see this slide twice. Virtualization and containerization. Virtualization was very, very amazing when it came out. It was an idea that you could have a computer that just existed. It was just made out of software, but it was a whole computer. It modeled an entire virtual computer, so that in order for the operating system to run on it, you actually have emulated all of the hardware in software, every network interface card, everything. It's all fully virtualized piece of computer hardware. And then you can have the entire operating system running on that. And then you can have software running on the virtual operating system, running on the virtual hardware. Well, it requires something called a hypervisor to manage the resources of the host computer and parcel those out, take some of the RAM and give it to the virtual machine. And, it tends to be bigger and slower because it's this massive monolithic thing, but it was very popular. A lot of cool things came out of it. VirtualBox, VMware, Hyper-V, these all use that type of approach. And also in the sort of DevOps world, you may have heard of Vagrant, which is a method of automating VirtualBox VMs. Things with Ansible and Puppet and Chef and stuff like that all work pretty well with that whole approach. But now the new hot sauce that everybody loves is containers. That's just Docker. It's not like with the other one. It's like, well, it could be VMware or Zen or QEMU or no, it's pretty much, I'm not aware of any other software that provides containerization that's any kind of competitor to Docker. You will sometimes hear of related technologies that are used with Docker, like Kubernetes or Rancher, or, it's all Docker though. And they emulate only a single application or service. So it's a layer, it's a thin slice. It's not like a whole computer that's virtualized. It's just one process that's providing a service to your project. So you may have multiple containers. They're all really small and lightweight. You can deploy multiple ones and you can be lighter and more agile. It does not require a hypervisor. When you use Docker, if you want to have more than one container, you're going to use something called Docker Compose that is going to allow you to orchestrate multiple containers in one environment. But if you don't even want to learn about Docker files and Docker Compose and all of this stuff, you can actually use one of these wonderful tools, which just offers a level of abstraction that simplifies the management of all of your Docker containers. So there's Lando, there's DDEV, there's Doxel. You can come back here and click on those links and find out more about these things. But for our live demo, we will be using DDEV and cloud-based dev environments. I put 4 of them up here. Come back, visit the slide, click on them, read their fine documentation. But the only one that exists in our demo is Gitpod. So I'll just skip that slide. And then Gitpod and Drupal. You could do WordPress, you could do something else. You can do anything you want in these darn containers, but I'm most excited right now about the work that's being done, particularly with this Drupalpod Starter Kit, which allows you to spin up a Drupal development environment in Gitpod using DDEV, which is what I'm going to use today. And then also the brand new one that just came out last week that is just bleeding edge, the Lando Drupal dev environment, which you should definitely check it out, but be prepared to debug things. It seems like it doesn't work. Sometimes you have to tell it to do something twice, it'll work the second time, or you just need to be familiar with all the steps and make sure that if it doesn't have basically the Drupalpod Starter Kit automates everything so that it just works and it's amazing. So for our live demo, we will use the DDEV-based Drupalpod Starter Kit repository, except we won't actually use their repository because when I started this slideshow and putting it together, I actually forked my project directly off of theirs. And then I found that when I got to the point in the demo where I was going to make a pull request off of my main branch of the origin repo in my Hot Web Matter account on GitHub, it actually was opening a pull request on the parent repo, the upstream remote. And that is exactly what you want to do if you want to contribute to an open source software project. And in fact, I think I do intend to go back and actually fork the Drupalpod Starter Kit and offer a pull request for some enhancements that I'm envisioning. Also with the Lando one, that's under very heavy development and certainly an opportunity to get some open source credit to, say, I contributed to this project. And both of these things are very active right now. But I kind of anticipated that I was going to be making a bunch of kind of silly fake changes just to demonstrate Gitness to you guys. And that might be annoying to the upstream developers. So what I had to do to set up my demo was I used git remote remove to remove the upstream. And I actually removed all of the remote repos. And then I made a brand new upstream repo that didn't share. It still has the same Git history as the original project, but it doesn't share any upstream with it. So when I do make a pull request, it's only going to offer to make it in my project, hopefully not annoying the upstream developers. And that is the live demo. And where are we at? We're at 55 minutes. So once again, I always just have such a good, but let's just hit this. Let's see what happens if I go. Gosh, I was in, let's just go to GitHub. Oh my gosh, come on. First of all, the Gitpod dashboard. I am logged. No, I'm not logged in. Fantastic. Great. This is what it looks like if you're not logged in. It says always ready to code. Try now. You can log in with GitLab, GitHub, or Bitbucket. I think you can log in some other ways. Remote development without friction works on my machine and yours. They're going to tell you that you can run this. You don't need a powerful laptop anymore. You can run it on a Chromebook. You can run it on an iPad if you dare. And that's because the remote development environment is pretty beefy and it may be even faster than certainly if you're on a Chromebook, it probably is faster. And so that's really cool. And what it's running by default is Visual Studio Code inside of this remote environment. And that's because VS Code is all made out of JavaScript, so it can run in the browser. And then down here, it'll also say that you can code anywhere on any device. Developers love it. Connect to Git repository, launch an example workspace, spin up developer environments with a single click. There is an extension for Firefox, and you can say add to Firefox and add it. All this really does is it adds, you don't really need this because I could show you manually how to do this. But let's just say we go back to the fun we have. Let's just go back to GitHub. Is this not, I'm typing on the wrong keyboard is why. I have so many computers in front of me. And what I did with the monitors is a little bit wacky. There's github.com. Let's go to me. Here I am. I'm not logged in. I can tell I'm not logged in because I use a, you know, why am I even doing this? I'm going to have to do, I think maybe I was using a different browser. I just switched to this computer for this today. So let's, because I was doing all this stuff, making the slides on my Linux computer, but I just did this. Let's see what happens if I do over here on the other screen, GitHub. Come on. I will show you. Actually, you know what? This one's going to be logged in. If I go to gitpod.io, let's see what that looks like. Boom. I'm going to put this, see if I can put this in front of the other thing. Come on, guy. I've got to just drag this to the other window, please. Where is it? Is this it? Oh, I'm telling you, I almost have this. Maybe I'm not sharing it. It's got to be on the other desktop. It's because the other one's in full screen. That's what's going on. Okay, I'm going to click on this. I'm going to make it maybe not so full screen so that I can get another thing on there. I should have just signed in. I don't know why I didn't do this. Guys, I just can't manage to drag this onto the other screen. Is it going on there? It looks like it's going to, and then it just doesn't. All right, guys, I'm going to sign on to this then. Oh, let me just sign in, for goodness sake. Sign in. Oh, look at that. Okay, I'm signed. Am I? No, follow. Come on, sign in. Yes, that's me. Fantastic. This, and I'm going to need two-factor authentication, which is why I was lazy about it before. Sorry. That should work. Whatever. Two-factor authentication. You guys are so patient. It's 4 o'clock, so I'm just at the end where I should have been asking for your questions. And I do see some questions in the chat. Maybe while I'm waiting for the two-factor thing to happen, we do it with a 6-digit code, which should be arriving on my phone any second now. Come on. Aha. 131918. Fantastic. Yes. Now you can tell I'm logged in because it's in dark mode. So now if I go to my repositories and I'm just going to hit this one, I believe Esteemed Drupalpod demo should be the one. And I can hit the Gitpod button because I just installed it and continue with GitHub. It's asking me to authenticate. Because I'm using a different browser, it's going to take a, you know, we're logged in. While we're waiting for it to spin up, I'm going to look at the chat and see, let's see, Git status in between Git add and Git commit is always a good idea. Yes, Ed, I do that in my real life as a developer. And that is definitely important. It was difficult to try to distill everything just for the slides, but I absolutely, oh yes, Randall Monroe, thank you, Dominic. It is not Randall Schwartz, that is somebody else who's I'm going to have to look up and figure out who that is. Now you'll note that it's, first of all, this is very interesting because it's building all these things in the Docker containers, but also, did I just miss this? I just missed the chance to run it in VS Code. There was a little pop-up that said, would you like to run this in VS Code? And actually, it's great when you do that. If you mash that, it will start it in VS Code. I wonder if there's a way to do that here. Open in VS Code. Brilliant. It's going to say choose application. It's going to say open link. I'm going to see if I can get that to happen while this is happening. The desktop application will actually open Gitpod at the same time as the other thing. Oh, now I'm getting a beach ball because it was faster before, but now I am actually giving a Zoom presentation. So I think I just slowed it down. I did say there would be a live demo. Let's make sure everybody has the link to the slides while we're waiting. I will make sure I can find that and share it. And I will probably need to update a couple of those. Well, you know what? Probably don't need to update the links. If you can't click on them, if they're not active links when you click on them, just copy and paste them because it'll be the URL. Generally, I believe it's the full URL. What I want to do is get this, the link to the slides. I think I've got.
I'm working on that, Matt, for you.
Oh, you're working on it for me? Fantastic. It is in the Esteemed Slack.
Yeah, I'll paste it
that
in.
We just got. Thank you so much for doing that. I'm still waiting for it to download. It just seems like it's beach balling. I don't know if maybe really I'm hitting the limits of this computer, which I thought was going to be the fastest one. What a bummer. I probably should have not started VS Code. Let's see what happens if I try to crash VS Code and see if it speeds up what's happening out in DDEV. I've been just practicing with this on my super fast Linux computer, which is not the best one for Zoom. And this is what always gets me in trouble with these presentations is that I don't have a video camera or anything, webcam on my Linux development computer. So I always try to recreate that environment on another computer. I was doing it on a Windows computer with WSL2. I'm now trying it on this newish Mac, which I thought was going to be so wonderful. But I am so sorry, guys. It looks like it is just slowed down to a crawl. Trying to see if I can. Here we go. I'll just change that to a stack. Wonderful. I did find the slides. There you go. That's, player. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that's the one. Just the player. Exactly. Fantastic. Yeah, I just made it to the chat, and that's pulling. It seems like it's completely halted. I wonder what would happen if I told it to reload the page in the browser. Let me just first make sure that it's not the fault of VS Code, which I will now try to crash. Oh yeah, cannot reconnect. Got a problem with that. I'm going to close the chat because it's in front of things. And here we go. It was really just a pop under this whole time. It was just a pop under, and it was under all the Zoom stuff. Sorry, guys. So it's not that the computer is too slow. It's that I could not see the pop under. Sorry. Let's open the preview. And it may look like, oh, well, that's the Mailhog preview. Sorry. Mailhog is like a service that sends mail, sends fake mails to your fake website. Here's Drupalpod. Thanks for waiting, everybody. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to first see, it says your site is installed and ready to use. So I'm going to run DDEV. I got to use the right keyboard, DDEV. And I'm going to run DDEV Drush status to see that it is running. Yes, it is running. Database connected, Drupal bootstrap successful. Don't worry about this 400 bad request. Something wrong is happening with it looks like it went to HTTPS port and it just needs to be over here maybe. Oh no, that's 8443. Here's how I'll get the real thing. DDEV Drush, I'm going to do ULI to log in and it's going to give me the actual, I got to hit control and because this is like a VS Code thing, or rather command on a Mac, command click. And it should be, it says it prevented the site from opening a pop-up window. So I want to allow that. Of course, I've got something in front of there. I have to say, okay. Oh my gosh, please let me click okay. It goes away every time. This is quite annoying. All right, hold on guys. I need to make this stop being full screen like this, because it's just madness. View, that's where it is, view, zoom, no, come on, exit full screen, because man, that's been killing me. I couldn't click on this, okay, that's better. Now I'm going to allow it to open this. I couldn't click on it, man, just because it was in full screen and it was like hiding every time I mouse down. So now I'm logged into the site. If I go to like home, that is Drupal running inside of the Gitpod. I mean, the next thing I want to do is I want to see, first of all, if I can you go back to this. This was the actual, that's what I should be able to put in the simple browser if I want to see the site in there, which is going to look like this. Yes, it's in there. Of course, it looks funny because I'm logged in. Let's make it bigger, but maybe not quite full screen. Much nicer. All right. So this is Drupalpod. Now let's take a look here and see what happens if I type git remote. Wrong keyboard. Git remote -v. This is a verbose thing. It's letting me know that indeed here's the Esteemed Drupalpod demo. And I'm in the main branch. Let's see what branches we've got. Git branch. Just main. So I'm going to make a new branch right here. I'm going to do git checkout -b. And I'm just gonna, just in case there was already a dev branch that I didn't pull from the remote, and I don't want to make two different branches with the same name and get into a weird situation. I'm going to call this branch demo, which is not one of your usual branch names. But now we're in a new branch called demo. And we're going to actually, the way to, I should have done a git fetch to see. I think git fetch --all will get everything. There's origin. And now if I do git branch, it should let me know if there was a no, just demo and main. So this is my new repo. It doesn't have dev yet. I'm pretty sure it won't be on here either. Esteemed Drupal demo. Let's see, main. Oh no, there's dev and stage and alter starter kit for demo. Unbelievable. There's a way to git fetch everything and it's just not occurring to me right now. But what I'm going to do is just push this demo branch just to show you what happens when you do that. We're back in Gitpod. We're going to do git branch. We got demo and I'm just going to touch a file. foo.txt, which is an empty file. If I do git status, as Ed very helpfully suggested, it will say that there's an untracked file, foo.txt, and I can git add. It tells you right there, nothing added to commit, but untracked files present. Use git add to track. So I want to git add foo.txt. And now if I do git status, it will be in green because it is now tracked. It's just an empty file. This isn't a real change. I'm just trying to show you the very quickest thing that I can. The way that we will do this now is we will commit it, right? Git commit. And I may as well show you also, if you don't put -m for a commit message on the line, it will drop you into an editor. And in Gitpod, it's friendly enough to put it in VS Code instead of VI, which is the default on most systems. And I happen to love VI. I know Ed loves VI, but this is going to just allow you to edit it here. And so I can just make a commit message up there, and I can say add foo.txt, which Lord knows what I'm even thinking of adding a file like that. But this is just to show you. And I'm going to close the file. How do you close it? With the X, I guess. And down here, it'll say, okay, create mode. There we go. We created it. If I do git status, it will say that the branch is now clean. Now I'm going to show you what happens if I do that trick that I mentioned before, where I do git checkout dev. Yes, and it's set up to track origin dev, which is good. It's good that it knows about it, and that now I can do git merge dash. It's making that change. And if I do git push, it put that on dev. But what I really want to do is I want to get check out that previous branch, that demo branch, and I'm going to git push -u origin demo. Now the new branch is on GitHub, and it says to create a pull request by visiting this. This is what it looks like when you create a pull request. Just gonna open that in another. Oh my gosh, that's not what I intended to do at all. The Zoom thing is in front of it now. I can just go back to my GitHub, and this is me, and I can go back to my repos, and this is the one I'm in the middle of right now. It's going to tell me that demo has changes and add foo.txt. And sure enough, there's one file change, one commit. Of course, this is an empty file, so it really doesn't show me much of a diff, unfortunately. I need to add at least a line of text to it so you can see what this looks like on here when you review the code. But let's say I review the code and I like it, and I say, you know, wow, looks good to me, approved. So I'm still just creating a pull request. It checks to see if it has any conflicts with the base branch. It does not. And I'm going to, I should be able to merge. I can create a merge commit or a squash and merge or rebase and merge. In this case, it's such a small thing. You know, it's not like thousands of lines of code or something. I'm just going to confirm the merge. It's just a silly nothing, but it's just to demonstrate this is how you do it on GitHub. So this is part of the important kind of workflow. Certainly, if you're merging to the main branch, you want it to go through this code review and have it's like a little chat room where you can have a conversation specifically only about this one change to the code, and it gives you a permanent record. Also, you can have this connected to your issues on GitHub, which I kind of recommend. You open an issue, like, oh, I'm going to alter the Drupalpod Starter Kit for Esteemed demo. And let's say I alter settings to export config YAML to --config. So let's say I do that. I got a new chat. What does it say? What's the link for? I just see an animated ball. Yeah, the animated ball it wasn't because my computer was too slow. It was because the stupid pop under from VS Code Zoom was in front of something that I needed to interact with and grant some permission. And that was just hanging there waiting for my permission, which never happened. But, you know, let's say change the .git ignore to allow committing the settings file. I believe that these changes maybe are already in sorry, I'm gonna go back to the code and I'm gonna go and look at a different branch, alter starter kit for demo. So you can see that I named this branch 0001 / I just named it after the issue. It was issue number 1 because I'm not using Jira or something like that. And I believe that it says the branch is 2 commits behind main. Oh my, that means I can't even compare them until I got to rebase it. Well, anyway, I'm not going to do anything with that one right now. I'll go back to the demo branch just because that's the one that I just started working on. It was brand new cut off of main. And let's go back to the Gitpod, and I will just show you what happens when you do tell it to open in VS Code, because I believe that will work now. Choose application, open link. I'm waiting for the pop-up. It popped under again, but I think I can do it. It popped under the chat. Okay. Yes, open this. Fantastic. And well, it worked for me earlier when I did it on Linux, but I have not tested that integration on here. And I did just install VS Code on here and everything. It's pretty cool when you get it to work with VS Code. It actually opens it on your computer running VS Code on your hardware, but in the terminal, it's SSH'd out into Gitpod, and it's running commands inside the container over an SSH connection. Just mind-blowing. But anyway, there's a certain amount of stuff that we can do right here. You can see what it did was, you know, it built all this stuff. That's like a composer install. And what I was trying to do with this was I was trying to see if you go here to, there's your site. Here's VS Code. Let's say you want to see the, these are the, you know, we edited the Git Ignore. There's our Git Ignore in, I'm going to move that over here. There we go. And this is the real Git Ignore for this project. And I wanted it to, I commented out where it was saying to ignore websites star settings PHP, because I actually want to commit settings PHP. Just being a Drupal project, I want to be able to go under web sites default, and in settings PHP, I want to change the default location of the configuration synchronization. And if you do that, I believe I did it. I should look here. Why don't you just go Command F to find config underscore, and there's your config sync directory. Let's change this in the branch. What branch am I in? I'm in the demo branch, and I'm going to change it right here. Settings, config sync, change it to /config, which is where I prefer to put it. And I believe that if I save that here, I can actually now just do a DDEV Drush config export. Barely know the long version of that because I think of it as CEX. But there it is, a whole config directory with a whole bunch of files. This is the default configuration for Drupal, right? So if I've got this in Gitpod, let's say that I now commit that, right? If I do git add config, and now if I do git status, you'll see that all of that stuff is green, except for the change in settings.php, which should really be another atomic commit. I'll just do a git reset. I haven't showed you guys git reset. That's going to unstage my changes. Git status and everything red now, the config directory and the changes to settings PHP. I'll do git add -up. And there is the one change that I made to that file. You can see I now have set the config directory to something that I can actually track in my Git repo, but it's outside the web root. And so from there, I want to say, yes, stage that and Git Commit -m, and it's going to be move config sync directory outside web root. And that's my commit message. Git status, as Ed suggested, will now show that the config directory itself needs to be added. Git add config, and that has all those YAML files are now going to be added. So I can do another git commit message, which is git commit m. I will just say you know what? It's export configuration, but you know that's the idea. I just want to give it like a nice little. And what's cool about this now is when I change things in Gitpod, I can pull it to another environment. Say I want to run it in my local environment, I can actually pull this and I can do the config import, or I can make changes in my local environment and I can push it out there, and I'll be able to import the changes from someone else's computer into this Drupalpod, this Gitpod environment. The last thing I was going to show you before I sign out is just, if you just go to gitpod.io, I believe it's gitpod.io/dashboard, but it might, come on. Right. Helps if I type on the correct thing. Here's the dashboard. And if you're logged into Gitpod, it actually shows you what you're working in. It looks like this one has just been created 23 minutes ago. There's no changes saved to it, bizarrely, which I think there probably should be. But you can pin this. You can pin the workspace so that it doesn't get thrown away automatically. Otherwise, unpinned workspaces that have been inactive for more than 14 days will be automatically deleted. And that's just because you could spin these up all the time and just be goofing around with them. They could be very disposable. But when you want to actually use Drupalpod, or Gitpod rather, if you want to use it to do work, you can do that now. You can just pin it. You get a very generous free plan. If I click back here, it'll hopefully show me somewhere what the let me get out of the docs. Here we go, and look at the pricing. And there's a generous free plan that gives you 50 hours a month of developer time. So that's it in a nutshell. That's Gitpod. It works great with Drupal projects now with DDEV. And if you guys have any more questions, I think the last thing that I heard was, let's see, it's dev. There was the spinning ball, and then wanted to know if Beautiful AI was being slow. I think that's it, guys. You got any other questions? And you guys can unmute yourselves if you have questions now too, because I probably should wrap it up. It's a little bit over again. Like I'm going up on an hour and a half, but hopefully you all found this pretty informative and interesting. I tried to get a lot of good information in there. Certainly the Gitpod stuff is brand new. It's been, people have been talking about it now for months, maybe a year or something. They've been talking about moving things out here. It's starting to really be stable, and people are able to really do the work out there now. And I'm very excited about Lando also getting support for Gitpod environments. That's just very cool. Let's see, slides would be very helpful. Thanks. Was that? No, that was, I think we did share the slides, so we can make sure that we reshare them. This is I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it. So I hope, yes, Larry, you
seems like maybe it's
slides,
down.
there it is.
Something.
Oh, the slides are down. Well, I'm going to stop sharing my screen anyway, and maybe it'll come back.
Mine loaded just now, so not sure. Seems
Did
like
you guys, there aren't really any other slides to show that are of any importance, but I will see if I can, I'll see if I can restore my Zoom controls now.
meant to everybody who's
So
asking for slides, this will all be sent out in the email as well and in Slack as soon as it's up on. Yeah.
Yeah, the slides.
It'll be there for later, Larry.
Hold on, guys. The slides, we already saw the last slide. Hopefully they're in the recording, the actual slides that I was showing. But the and I'm zooming through it to the end again, so that there is a closing slide after live demo and Q&A. There is a closing slide which we can now attempt to put up if I can share my screen again, which is, I am screen sharing apparently. Can you guys see that where it says now get busy?
Yeah.
Nice little, oh, great. That's wonderful. So hopefully that's the closing slide. If there are any other questions, we got, okay, people clapping and we got thumbs ups. Some people seem to have enjoyed it. And then, and Larry says, if they are there later, that's fine. Thank you for an excellent presentation. You're welcome, Larry. Thank you for coming. Thank you everyone for coming. 90 minutes well spent. I feel like that was a pretty good one as far as actually getting some meat on the bones and talking about stuff. I know a lot of it may be very sort of introductory remedial Git stuff for a lot of people that are already developers, but I wanted to make sure it was accessible to people at all levels, and that we, by the end of the talk, got into the area of how do you do this? The advantage, to my mind, to setting this up out in a Gitpod environment is, even if you're the only developer, right? You want to get an idea of what it's like to work for an agency or work for a distributed team. Then you can actually do this. You can have different workstations and connect to the same Gitpod from different workstations. You can connect to the same Git repo from your local environment and push things back to your GitHub, and then go get them in Gitpod like you were another developer. You know, do all your front end work in your local computer and all your back end work in Gitpod like you're a team, and see how this works. All the branching and merging that teams have to do in order to get things, everything coordinated and everything flowing together, and get the team all firing on all cylinders so that you can actually do your development together. And that is a good thing to practice even when you're a solo developer. You can start to see what the best practices are in terms of making all the commits with the good messages, so that you look back and you see the history of everything you did. You can start to make pull requests for everything. Even if you're the only person on the team, it gives you an actual record of all the changes that you made. Some places that I've worked actually require you to make a PR to merge to dev or to merge to stage or intermediate environments. You know, it's just a record, and it's an opportunity to have a conversation about it, for somebody to give you a little code review and say, you've got a, you didn't close a delimiter and it's crashing, or, something you should have caught, or I don't know, or you just spelled something wrong in the comment. Whatever it is, you looking at each other's stuff that's indented properly. You should have a doc block, whatever the style conventions or whatever. But part of the whole DevOps thing also, and the idea of the developer experience that can be so great with this, is you can set up all the tools that you need inside of this Docker container, not only for you to do all of your backend development and have, PHP with whether it's Apache or Nginx or something, and have like a database, whether that's like MariaDB or MySQL or something, and have all the tools that you need for that stuff. But you can even have front end toolkit that's like with NPM or Yarn, do things with like Sass, or you can have linters and sniffers to maintain your code quality. You can make sure that you don't commit any code that contains errors. And then you can start to get into test-driven development, where you actually write tests for all your code and make sure that it works people, let's see, the running site. There isn't really a running site. The running site right now is just on Drupalpod, and that is the only running site. But if I did want to open it in a local environment, boy, that I think what's happened on Mac OS, since this is a brand new computer and I haven't granted it all the permissions, I think something is happening that VS Code is just not getting the permissions to do what it wants to do with Gitpod. But I can try it one more time if you want to see what it looks like in VS Code. It's going to say choose application, open link, and it's down here. I'm going to say open, connecting to Gitpod workspace. It's trying to do it. When I do this on Linux, it works. Something else is supposed to pop up pretty soon after that says, oh my gosh, here it comes, setting up SSH host. Are you sure you want to continue? Continue. This is it, guys. I trust the authors. So this is kind of amazing. This is my local development environment. This is just an IDE running on this computer, or I don't know if you can really call VS Code an IDE. It's a code editor with some IDE functionality. But what's happening here is that this stuff here is actually, it's out in, I wonder if I can find a way of demonstrating this conclusively. But like, let's say I do just DDEV, Drush, or I could even, yeah, DDEV Drush status. And it'll show me, it should show me if it knows that, yep, the site URI is out here in gitpod.io. So this is not my local development environment. This is a local program, which is showing me not only the file system of, and there's my new config directory that I just made, so that I can do my configuration synchronization. But, you know, it's showing me the remote file system in Gitpod, and it's giving me a terminal connection to the remote Gitpod. So it's really just another window into Gitpod, just the same as my browser is. It's very, very interesting. And Michael McGinn, you're saying DDEV share. Are you saying like if I can, oh, you want to like for other people to be able to see the website? I will show you that as well. That is actually very interesting. So let's say if I have, I'm gonna minimize VS Code so we bring the browser back to the front, and this window is just useless. This is in Gitpod. Let's see what these things are. This one is your file explorer, which is what you usually use when you're using VS Code. You want to edit a file. The search, we're familiar with that, right? That's the same as VS Code running in your local. Here's a source control, which is for syncing changes. This is a different way of looking at your Git stuff. The run and debug is if we want to set up Xdebug. Extensions is to do plugins for VS Code, but this next one is very interesting. And it's, I think, I don't know if it's specific to Gitpod or if it's just something that maybe it also works the same way with VS Code in code spaces for GitHub, other things. But it's very, very interesting. It shows us the ports that are open, and it shows us, you know, whether they're private, and there's a little sort of unlock thing. If I figure out which port the it looks like 8080 perhaps is the port that I would want to make public if I want to share that. First, let's verify that this is, if I say open browser, yes, that's Drush site install, which is the name of it. So if I go to port 8080 and I say to unlock that, right? Now it's public. So I should be able to share this site URI with everybody in the, gosh, can I even copy? And I go back to our chat over here. And this site should now be shared with the public. And I will rely on you guys to tell me. Actually, I will check it. I'm going to check it on another computer if I can. That'll be very interesting. So I'll just do that real quickly. I'll send myself that link on, and Michael McGinn says it works. So that's great. This is actually, so if you want to show it to your client, right? And I don't know whether you may have, I don't know if there's a way, I'll have to really think about it, if there's a way to set up multiple different environments with one repo so that you have deploy targets within Gitpod. I don't think that's really possible. I think Gitpod essentially is going to be a dev environment that you can spin up a live version of it that isn't just on your local, but that you can share it with people. And then you're also going to want to figure out a way to build and deploy that code to a hosting service that's got continuous uptime, whether that's your own AWS, or if you're using something like, Pantheon or Acquia. Of course, if you're using Acquia, you're probably paying for Acquia. So if you're paying for Acquia, if your client has the money to pay for like an enterprise subscription to Acquia, then you can use Acquia. What is it called? Dev. It was one of my earlier slides. They have a name for this. It's like a Acquia cloud. Shared hosting FTP. I'm not sure. No, Michael McGinn, I don't know whether I can, is there an FTP port that I can open? You would probably need to do some mucking about with your Docker files to expose an FTP service, because essentially Docker Compose is providing all these other things, Mailhog and, PHP, MyAdmin, and all these other things that are currently, most of the services are restricted to just me being logged in with my GitHub account, but I can make them public if I wish, and I can make them share. There isn't really an option, as far as I know, with Gitpod to just open it up to members of your team. Although with the paid version there may be, and just with the free version there isn't. With the free version, which is all I'm familiar with, you either have it's private, and I'm the only one who can access these services because I'm logged in through whatever is providing OAuth with my GitHub account, or I can make it public, in which case everybody out there, including everybody in Russia and China, and everyone can see the website and try to hack into it or whatever. But it's good for sharing it. You can turn it on and off. You can have a meeting and expose the site for the duration of a meeting to your clients who perhaps are remote. And then, yes, exactly. You want to be able to deploy it to a shared hosting site. I would recommend doing that with Git. So essentially with Git, you would want to, you would probably be able to, the way it works with something like Acquia or Pantheon is that you set up a secondary Git remote, which you can deploy your code to that and kick off a build. I think with Pantheon, they recommend you use Circle CI. That's just another one of, Travis, there's all different services. And with Acquia, I think they don't allow you to do anything about Acquia pipelines, which you have to pay for, which is a shame, because if you're using GitHub, you'd like to be able to use GitHub Actions to launch your build. Or if you're using, Bitbucket, you'd like to be able to use Bitbucket pipelines. Or GitLab has GitLab CI. There are all different ways of launching pipelines. And essentially what that would do is you commit only the things to your repo that are necessary to build your project. And then when you get it in the dev environment or the stage environment or the production environment, you pull the latest code from that branch, you run composer install, you probably run like npm CI or npm install or like yarn, that you're going to build your front end toolkit, and then you run something like gulp or something that's going to build your front end assets, SaaS, type of stuff, and anything that you need to do to transpile your ES6 to vanilla JavaScript or anything like that. That's all part of your build. And then you probably want to throw away all the npm stuff, that whole the folder that's got that in it. It's it's in every one of my repos now. And I'm just I'm not remembering it off the tip of my tongue here, but you know, it's something you don't need to actually deploy to the live site. You just need it during the build. And then you probably want to run whatever tests to determine that, you know, if you're running linters, if you're running sniffers, code quality enforcement, or if you're going to maybe PHP unit testing, or you're doing something else with like browser testing with Selenium WebDriver, or you're doing something with you know, Nightwatch JS or something like that. You can run all these different tests, behavior tests with Behat, all different kind of tests that you can run on your code, make sure that it works the way you want it to, and then you finish the build by you know, putting it where it belongs in production. And the last thing you probably do then is if you've got Drush as part of your project, you're going to do like a Drush deploy so that any staged configuration gets deployed to that environment along with whatever config splits you have configured for that environment. That's the idea. I did say the CI stuff was out of scope, so I really can't answer too many questions about that, but that's the idea. Yeah. Oh, and export the DB. Yeah, actually, Michael McGinn, that was one of the changes that I made to this repo. I'm not sure if it's necessary, but that is one of the changes that I made to this repo. If you look at the Explorer here, one of these things is db_init.sql.gz. That is just out in Gitpod. When I first built the project, I told DDEV to export that, and I committed it to the repo. Now, I did this for a kind of an odd reason. Normally, it's not a great idea to actually, you know, first of all, database dumps can be very large. They can take up a huge amount of space in your repositories, and they can also contain a lot of sensitive information that you don't need to put in your Git repo at all. You know, everything from the user's hashed passwords to other personally identifiable information, all kinds of stuff. Yeah. But you don't want to put a production database in your repo. But in this case, I did want to put the initial state of the database on a fresh install. And the reason for that is because I'm not certain that I will be able to share the configuration between Drupalpod, which is currently my, like it spins up and it installs the site, and that is the original state of the database before anything happens with Drupal, right? And if I'm going to export that config, I want to be able to import it somewhere else. I think if I run drush site install from the same code base in my local, then I'm going to end up with a different database, and I'm going to end up with different UUIDs for every single configuration schema that's in the YAML. You know, they're all going to be, I don't think you can actually export it then from Gitpod and import it in your local. That's why I exported the initial state of the database. My idea being that if I come back to my actual local development environment, I mean, let's say we did share a, I'm still doing a live demo, guys, because Michael talked me into this cool idea. But let me just see if I can here do, boom. If one of these things might be here, I'm just gonna clear that and CD, I think it was demo. I could just pull it, you know, I could pull it right now, but let's see. Is there anything in there? Nothing in there. I think I just made another one called demos. I got to remember for sure what it is that I'm, what branch I'm working on and everything. Let's take another quick look at this. This is Git remote -v, and it's esteemed Drupalpod demo .git. If I just grab this, you know, if I just say, let's just make sure that I didn't already get it, but back here, demos maybe is where I put it. That is not the same one. So what I'm going to do, what else is in here? Is there, No, it isn't. So I'm going to go into the new, into this new demo directory that doesn't have anything in it yet. And I'm going to see what happens if I do what you're suggesting here, which is to say git clone that. Is that right? No, that's not the right, darn it. There's a different thing in the, I did tell the browser to copy that darn thing. It would be like this: git at github.com colon, then it would be, I believe, hot web matter slash esteemed Drupal pod demo. Boy, let's see if I just did that correctly. Oh my gosh, I did. Wow, I typed it correctly without copying, pasting it. I'm going to now have, there's the Esteemed Drupalpod demo project. If I CD into there, then I should be able to, first of all, DDEV start. Crazy. It's because I did not rename it. And I already have the old Drupalpod Starter Kit. So if I actually want this to work in my local, and this is just a little bit crazy, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to do vim dot ddev, and then it's config.yaml. And I'm going to look in there where it says Drupalpod Starter Kit, and I'm going to just say, I'm going to change its name to Drupalpod demo. And I should be able to start it now. This is a peculiarity of DDEV. Lando doesn't care if you have the same project running in multiple different directories, but DDEV cares about the path. It's one of the few things that I don't like about DDEV, but I'm not really going to complain about it. What I'm going to do is right here in the main branch, I'm just going to see if I can now do a DDEV start. And if I do that, it's starting. It could take a while. But that's the idea. Yeah, it's going to do it. And then when it finishes building, it's got to get all these things, right? Successfully started Drupalpod demo. What you'll find, though, is DDEV. I won't be able to do DDEV Drush status, I bet. Nope, failed to run Drush status. Why is that? Because I have not done DDEV Composer install. So once that happens, and Composer is a notorious memory hog, I don't know how long it will take to build this in my local environment. It didn't take too long in Gitpod, and it seems to not be taking too long in my local either, which is pretty good. So it's Drush is the big one. You'd be surprised how comparatively lean Drupal is without Drush. Drush brings in a lot of dependencies from Symfony and other projects. This is hanging at 97%, which is fairly common. And I don't know, there's 98 though. We're getting there. Boy, you know, I could stick around. We're approaching the 2-hour mark, but if you are still interested, I will do this. It's at 98, so we're almost done. I'm going to wait for this long hang time for the last 2% of Drush, and then it'll be done installing itself. I should be able to get a Drush status that tells me I've got. It won't be able to. Do the Drupal bootstrap until you either run Drush site install, which is a step that was scripted by Drupalpod, though it just happened automatically in the background. We weren't even paying attention to it. It just happened, right? But here we could run that manually, but then I don't know if I would actually be able to share the configuration. So what I'll do instead is use DDEV to import that initial database, and then I should be able to import the configuration schema from out there. And once you got that, yeah, DDEV import DB, exactly. It'll be space dash dash src equals the name of the file, which is, I could scroll back up and see if I see it up here, but you know, it's in here somewhere, but I'll LS it as soon as this is done. I'm at 98%. This is not the fun part of the demo, but you got the idea though. We've got it in our local and we've got it in Drupalpod. And so, or in Gitpod rather. Drupalpod is just the name. While I'm waiting for this, I may as well show you out on the web where Drupalpod comes from. It's this guy, Offer Shawl. So if I change this to SHAAL, well, first of all, there's Drupalpod. The project itself has its own GitHub account, and it's got two different projects in here so far. The one that I'm working off of, which is a vanilla Drupal 9 install with a full DDEV environment. Then there's Drupalpod Tome Starter Kit. I love Tome. Anybody else out there love Tome? Show the clapping hands emojis, but Tome is great. It's just a way that you can take your Drupal site and you can export it to a static site with like its own built-in functionality. It's really, really slick and easy. And it's a good way of doing, it's not the same as doing a headless decoupled Drupal site where you've got like a RESTful API and then some front end that's talking to it from like React or Vue or Angular or something that's talking to the RESTful API. But it's the next best thing, which is you can actually just export a static site, which depending on what your Drupal site does, it might work fine for most of the features. You won't be able to do the same things with search and with forms. There's workarounds for different things. And then you can just export that static site to a service like Netlify or GitHub Pages. And you can do that. You can even make it happen automatically every time somebody updates content on the site. You can have Tome export the static site to, it's just wild. So those are the two things. And then if you want to see the other Drupalpod, the origins of it, it's this guy, Shawl. There he is, a totally brilliant engineer, and he loves open source, thinking out of the box and fixing problems. Drupalpod is his project, but also this Drupalpod project, it's different from the one that I've been showing you, which is Drupalpod Starter Kit is a starter kit for you to make any old Drupal project out of Drupal. This Drupalpod is for people who want to contribute to Drupal core development. So it's a little bit heavier what it's got in there. It's got all of the Drupal core development, the dependencies for a Drupal core development environment. And that includes other things besides just Drupal core. It's got, does it say? It doesn't really say here, but there's a way to find out what all of the things are. You could just look at there should be a composer.json, wouldn't you think? But maybe the gitpod.yaml is pulling another thing. Anyway, I don't even know how this works, but it gets a ton of stuff. It gets things that you need for, there's PHP debug, PHP sniffer, IntelliFence, all kinds of different stuff in here that it's going to use. And even I think it does Nightwatch testing and PHP unit testing for your, all of these are different shell scripts that are part of the Gitpod setup. If you really want to get into how it's done, look at this guy's repos, which are the ones that are the precursor to the user-friendly ones here. And this is the one we're using, Drupalpod Starter Kit. Now, I actually did make a pull request and I shut it down because I didn't mean to make it. It's this one, edit Git Ignore. And I said, oops. Sorry, meant to demo only in my own repo. Looks like I should not use a fork for this. But if you want to contribute to the project, you do want to use a fork. You'll use a fork and then you can make the contributions to your own repository. And then when you merge it with your main, you make a pull request and they will see it. The upstream developers will see it and they will get a chance to review your code and see if they want it in their project. And that is how you get to commit to their project. In terms of Drupal, it's a little bit different because I think the core Drupal developers would really prefer for everything to be done through Drupal.org and through gitcode.drupal.org, which is the GitLab. It's called Git. Here we go. I'll show you that as well real quick. Gitcode.drupal.org. And this is not, oh no, it's Git. It's Git Drupal code. It's something, git.drupalcode.org is what it is. You know, there's no link to this from any of that. You just got to know to munge the URL like that. Git.drupalcode.org. This is the real repo. It's on the public internet. It's just not really linked from Drupal.org. You have to know that whenever you go to a Drupal.org project, like say it was, project something that that people, just Path Auto or some other module, right? If you want to look at this is what it looks like. We're all used to seeing this, right? If you want to like go and install a module. But what you also find out is that if you change the www to Git and you change Drupal to Drupal code, then it opens up the source code for Path Auto in Drupal's GitLab. They prefer to have people use that system, not GitHub for the actual development. So it's a little bit, there's so many people who use GitHub. It's hard to not take advantage of that, all that synergy, all those people in the huge global community of developers using GitHub for every sort of thing, but so that's pretty interesting. And you could even see I think what was mine, it's the thing that I made for the Sessionize embed block that I made for Drupal Camp New York City. And there's the real project page. But if I changed it to git.drupalcode.org, happen to know that's how you have to change the URL. They could make that a little bit, it's kind of an undocumented feature. And there's the actual source code for my thing that I contributed, a contributed module. So this is what you have to figure out when you actually want to publish a contrib module and make an official release that goes into the Drupal.org module listings. This is what you got to do. I haven't quite gotten to the point yet where I take the next step and I get the security clearance so that I get that notice removed. Like, this is not covered by the security policy. I'm working on that, but working on a lot of other things first. It did eventually get Drush. So here we go. And we're just going to see what happens if we try now to do DDEV Drush status. We're going to find, just as I imagined, that Drush works now. Everything is installed by Composer, but we're not getting, it says that it knows the DB, but it's not connecting to the DB and it's not getting a Drupal bootstrap. That's what you're really looking for when you do Drush status. So this will be the last thing I show you, and then we'll be wrapping it up around the 2-hour mark. And this is, if we do DDEV, boy, it's is it import DB or DB import? It is import DB, I believe. Yes, export DB and import DB are the, so that is what we want to do. We're going to import a SQL file. I don't know why I don't just type it. It's lazy of me. I'll just type it, DDEV import dash DB, not an impulsort. And this is it, DB init SQL GZ, because apparently I've already done this in the other project that was fork that was contributing my fake stuff to them. So there it goes, successfully imported database. And now if I do the DDEV Drush status, we're going to see what we've been looking for, which is database connected. Drupal bootstrap successful. So that means that now we can do DDEV Drush ULI, and if we see a URL here, we can even open it now. I think if you're just open selection as URL ought to do it. And it's logging me into the same, it's not the same site that's running in Drupalpod. It's in fact not quite right. And it looks like this is not a real high note to end on, but let's just say something else happened automatically on Drupalpod, out on Gitpod in their build process that I haven't done locally yet. So there is a bug with my local site, which doesn't exist out on the Gitpod version of the site. And I'm sure given another 15 minutes, I probably could debug that and get the, well, you know what it is? Let's just see what happens if I clear the cache. How often is it just clear caches? CR, cache rebuild in Drupal 8 plus. It's no longer CC, it's CR. So yep, you cache rebuild complete, and let's see if it's still ugly or if it's beautiful. Oh, the suspense. It is beautiful. We go back to the content, and now we can go home and see the front end of the site. Thank you everybody for coming. This has been a wonderful live demo. I finally got to the part where I can show you, and the last thing I said that was going to be the last thing, but let's just go ahead and see what happens when I actually import DDEV, Drush config import, which all it's going to do is tell me, whoa, there's actually a ton of stuff. There's a ton of stuff. Oh, because I'm on the main branch, maybe I haven't, hold on. I'm just going to say no. Let's take a quick look and list what's in here. We've got composer.json, we got vendor and web, but we don't have our config directory yet. So first we need to git check out. I believe it's in the demo branch. It may also be in the dev branch. But if I list now, no, it's not there, huh? Oh, wait, I have to git pull. Already up to date. Am I using the right branch? Git remote -v. You get the idea. The idea is Esteemed Drupalpod demo should have somewhere in it. It should have the, let's change to the dev branch. Maybe I merged it with the dev branch. And I'll do a git pull and list vendor and web. Am I in? No, it's not. There is no config directory. So essentially what I would need to do is go back out to Drupalpod, or I could try to do it here. Wait, ls. There's config is in here now. And if I do git status, my branch is ahead of origin demo by 2 commits. All I need to do is git push. Wow, this is the real demo. This is the real heart of the demo. So I have now pushed that to the demo branch. I'm even going to do the thing where I git checkout. Oh, git checkout dev. And let's just make sure we still have, we don't have the, that branch in there. So I'm going to do the same trick that I did before, which is to git merge dash. I'm going to merge in the demo branch. You see create mode, a whole bunch of files just came in like magic. And now if I git push, now the dev branch contains this stuff, and I'm going to come back to my iTerm where I'm in the dev branch, and I'm going to git pull, and I'm going to get all that junk. Amazing. And now if I try to do git our DDEV Drush config import, it's probably going to tell me that it's identical. No, wow, crazy. Let me just make sure I know what's going on. But this is the idea. You want to be able to synchronize these two things. So hold on. I'm going to say no, and I'm going to see what is the difference here. We're going to do just list. The config directory is there. You know what? It's a brand new site. I'm going to see what happens if I do config import y, because I want to see if it works. It didn't work because there are errors validating the config synchronization. The site UU, this is exactly what I'm trying to avoid by sharing that database. Site UUID in source storage does not match the target storage. I think that the reason for this is because that database file I'm passing around is from the first project that I made when it was a fork. So it's not from the new Gitpod. So literally all I need to do to be able to share these things is out here in Gitpod, I need to do another DDEV export DB. I think that's all I need to do. It'll give it a default. No, that doesn't work. This is not Lando. DDEV is not as user-friendly. Export DB, and I need to redirect it to, I will call this init. Don't you think that was what it was called? My goodness, hold on. I'm going to ls. DB init, okay, that's what it's called. So DDEV export DB, redirect to DB underscore init SQL GZ. Boy, that is a different file. And I'm being a little bit lazy. I'm committing it directly to the dev branch. Remember what I told you. You're going to make a change like this. You're going to commit it to a feature branch, and then you're going to merge that with dev. If you want to see it on dev, you're going to merge it with stage. So let's do this. Git checkout demo and git status. This is a binary file. You don't want to look at the git diff of this. It's just going to be a million lines of jibba jabba. It's just weird binary data that doesn't look human readable, but this is the proper database. So I'm going to git commit, whoops, M requires the value. I was trying to hit the quote key and I hit the enter key, which is right next to it. And git commit M, and I'm going to say, export the real database. That is a perfectly valid commit message. No changes added to commit because I did not git add yet. So I need to git add db init SQL GZ. And now I can use that same git commit -m. I'm going to say git status. Ahead of origin demo by one commit, git push. And again, I could get this in my local just by pulling the demo branch, which is the feature branch. So let's say the two developers are talking to each other and one of them says, just check out my feature branch, you know, and it's okay, git check out demo. Oh, my branch is behind origin demo by 2 commits and can be fast forwarded. Use git pull. Oh yeah, so that's got the new, it's got the all the config YAML, but it also has the database. And if I do now DDEV import DB, that thing, it's gonna drop all the tables, and now I should be able to do a config import without any errors. There are no changes to import. Huzzah! So this is the proof of concept. We have the same beginning state of the database after installation on Drupalpod and in my local development environment. That means that now the UUIDs for all of these configuration schema keys and values, like it's all gonna sync up. It's not gonna say, wow, you're trying to import configuration from a completely different website. It's gonna say, I recognize, I recognize that this is the correct, and I believe, Michael, you just asked demo branch. Yeah, that was just kind of a silly name I gave it. I should have probably called it feature/1234-demo or something. You can do this also. You can do git branch -m and call the demo branch. You can say you want to call it feature/1234-demo. I mean, there, I just did it. I gave it I stuck with our naming convention for branches. Now, keep in mind, naming conventions are just whatever your team wants it to be. The important thing is just to be consistent with your team and to make sure that it does something useful, so that when you look at the entire history of the project, because everybody's stuck to that convention, it helps you to filter all of these branches and know what you're looking for. And certainly if you've got Jira ticket numbers in there, that's going to help you with, that's how the project management software is designed to run. But yeah, I can DDEV start and then DDEV launch. It's already DDEV started. Yeah, it is here. If you want to see it in my local, it looks like this. It's well, hold on now, DDEV. I think I just did. It's Drupalpod demo DDEV site, and that's where it is. So if I just say to open selection as URL, that's what it looks like here. Now, I mean, I'm on such a roll, and it's only 2 hours. If there's no, if people are still interested, certainly when you watch this on YouTube later, you could just run it at a faster speed to get through all of this stuff. But let's say in my local Drupalpod demo DDEV site, I want to do something crazy. Like I'm just going to do DDEV Drush theme enable Olivero successfully enabled theme Olivero. I don't know if I need to clear cache or anything, or if it's just gonna, well, yeah, I probably need to clear the cache. I should have done that maybe with the user interface with the admin UI to have it be the default theme. Cache rebuild complete, and let's see what it looks like now. Does it look beautiful? Does it look like a beautiful new? No, it doesn't. So I'll just do this super quick because I do want to show you what happens when I change something in the local environment. I'm going to do DDEV Drush ULI to get logged into it. User login. I tried in the demo to do full versions of everything, but I have my inscrutable shortcuts for Drush. Of course, everybody should know the same shortcuts for everything, but I also have, since I use OMyZ shell, and it has a Git plugin, and it has aliases for every darn thing you can imagine. I even have my own custom aliases, so that when I want to git pull, I just do GL. When I want to git push, I just do GP. It's amazing how much faster you can type when you only have to type 2 letters for every command. But let's just say open that selection as a URL. I should be logged in now as user 1 in my local computer. I'm going to go to appearance. I should know how to do this with Drush and the command line, but let's just say set as default. That's what I was missing. I did set it as the default, and now if I go back home, it should look like a different theme. It looks like Olivero now, which is lovely. And now in my local, crazy, I'm going to do DDEV Drush config export. And Olivero, all of the configuration schema for this theme is all being exported to my YAML. So this is the thrill of having these things in sync with each other in your local and out in Drupalpod. And let's say I've got feature 1234 demo. I could really call it feature 1234 enable Olivero, right? since I've already just renamed it, maybe I will actually do that. Feature 1, 2, 3, 4 demo. I'm going to call this feature 1, 2, 3, 4 enable Olivero. And this is a feature branch. This is a legit feature branch. You do this all the time. Maybe you didn't write any PHP code. Maybe you didn't write any JavaScript. You didn't even write any Sass or CSS or anything. You just exported some configuration to YAML, and that's a feature branch that's going to change something, something about site building, something about the architecture, the information architecture of your Drupal site, your custom content types and their view modes and display modes and stuff, and all that stuff can just be represented by a YAML. You export that, and it's going to be right now. If I say git status GST, that's my git status. I'm speeding up a little by not typing the full thing, but it is the same as if I type GIT STATUS, and then boy, the live transcript. Boy, I hope it worked. And we remembered to turn it on when I started. But let's just say I do git add. It's very interesting. I could show you more details about this, but I'm just going to do git add config and just add all the configuration stuff at once. And I believe I also made a little change to the DDEV config.yaml. Boy, that's going to be interesting when I push that back out there. I'm not going to commit that. That is specific to my local environment. And what I really should have done is probably leave it with the same name, and I should have destroyed the other DDEV thing and its Docker container so that then I could use the same name, because I do want them to have the same name in the local and remote. The change that I just made in my local so that it would start up just because I was doing it quickly is going to break the ability for me to synchronize these two sites with each other as though they were the exact same site. So I'm not going to commit the first line there that says .ddev/config.yaml, but I am going to commit all of that other stuff, which is now going to be green, except for that last line, the DDEV config.yaml. Not committing that because it will break what's out there in Drupalpod. And now I'm going to git commit, and the message is, oh, I'll show you without a commit message. Boy, this is VI. Love me some VI. I know Ed, if he's still around, he loves VI. I worked at an agency where you were not allowed to say git commit -m and just do the shortcut on the command line. You had to do this because it was always a multi-line commit message that followed a very strict thing, and you always had to do this. But let's just say I do enable Olivero theme, and that is my git commit message. Remember to hit escape:\WQ, and that's good. And then we're going to do I believe, oh, I know why git status says there's still one change that's, so it's not going to say it's clean, but the config, I have done it. So if I do a git push, and indeed I need to do git push, it's u origin, and I can't push it up there because there is no, I renamed it just to demonstrate how to do that. Now I have to push this renamed branch up there. And when that gets there, I can check it out in Gitpod. I could even do that, presumably, in Visual Studio Code, if that would come to the front. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it in Gitpod like this before it goes to sleep. And what we're going to do super quick is we're going to do git check out, or git pull first, because it doesn't even know about this thing. Git pull, and there's the new one, 1, 2, 3, 4 enable Olivero. Git check out feature enable Olivero. Very used to it doesn't let you paste it. What a bummer. All right, I'm just going to type it because I'm not that lazy. I don't think I need to put origin here. I think I just put feature, enable. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. Switch to the new branch, git pull. My goodness, already up to date. And now we're going to do DDEV, Drush, CIM, config import, and say yes. Did it work? It worked. I'm going to even do DDEV, Drush, CR just to be on the safe side. And when we go back to look at the, boy, I don't want to look at DB init SQL GZ. That's terrible. And I'm going to go back here because I don't really want to look around for it too much. Remote Explorer says this is the one that's open to the public. And I'm just going to open it in the preview. And now it looks like Olivero. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That is the final trick for this afternoon's entertainment. So it works. You can make the changes in your local repo, commit them to your local repo, push that branch out to GitHub, pull that branch in another environment, and you can synchronize your development that way. Developers all across the world can share their configurations and settings with each other that way. So that then I get what you were working on, and I get to see exactly up to the minute the state of your code, and I can help you to debug it and to implement whatever custom business logic and whatever cool groovy web applications that we are all building. And that's what we're going to do. We're just gonna we're going to use Git and Gitpod, and we're going to be able to just collaborate with people all over the place, even if they don't have really fancy computers. They just have a Chromebook, they just have an iPad. They can be on the team, they can help out with the project if you've got it in a Gitpod based environment. It's kind of amazing. So you just need the knowledge. You don't necessarily need so much money to get your foot in the door of the web development. So thanks again, everybody. And this is now, I'm approaching a 2.5 hour mark. So I think I really will wrap it up unless anybody else has any other questions. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask me out loud if you got a question. I am still looking at the chat window, and I'm going to give you just a couple more minutes. It's 2:24. When we get to 2:25, if I haven't heard from anybody, I'm going to thank everyone for a great time and a great lunch and learn, and probably my longest one yet, but also probably my the meatiest and the most exciting one. So I'm very happy with how that turned out.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Very insightful. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Awesome. All right, terrific. I will see you all in Esteemed Slack, and I will see you hopefully, we'll get you all some roles. I'm seeing some applause in there. I'm seeing people seem to be having a nice time. All right, I feel pretty good about it. Thanks, everybody. And if anybody's in Florida, Drupal Camp Florida is happening now, and it is in person only, or else I would be there. So if you are within driving distance of Florida, strap on a face mask and go meet the folks in person. I absolutely encourage you to go there and check it out. And also their website this year is a very cool thing. They're working on a new Drupal events platform that's going to be based on the code that people are working on for this Florida Drupal camp. So definitely check that out. I can even try to very quickly as we sign off, if there's a couple of people left, I can see if I can find the, I'm never going to find it. Am I going to find it fast enough? I'm going to go back to the, it's somewhere in Slack. It's the Drupal camp organizers, and it's called the iDrupal event platform. And Martin Anderson Klutz just released the first alpha 1 of the event platform. I'm going to go ahead and I'll just put that in colleagues Drupal because most of us are in there. I'm going to go ahead and put that in there, and then I'll paste it out of there. That's a good way for me to get it from my Linux computer that is on all the Slacks. And for my information, I am still sharing the site publicly. Very good call. I might want to, for security's sake, as soon as I go back to Esteemed public Slack and go back to the Drupal, colleagues Drupal, and grab this link so that I can share it in our chat. I'm gonna paste that there. Check that out. This is the new Drupal 9 distribution that is going to be, hopefully, is going to be the basis for many event platform, not just Drupal camps, but it's going to be an all-purpose events organizing distro. And what I'm going to do, guys, while I'm still sharing, just before I stop sharing, is you are correct. 8080 is still open to the public. I just have to click that lock to make it private. And now it's private. All my things are private. And I can even spin down the, I can say, stop workspace. That doesn't throw away my data. It just stops me from using my 50 hours a month so that I can continue using the free plan. And it's stopping it is going away. And then I'm going to stop sharing and sign off right at the 2.5 hour mark. What an epic lunch and learn. That was like a lunch. That was like a 7-course lunch and learn. That was like a buffet and learn. All right, thanks everyone for coming. And you can see it's still powering down, but that's going to happen. I'm going to hit stop share and I'm going to get ready to sign off.